The smoky dawn light spilled across the red keep's shattered stones, glinting in the dust like embers that refused to die even after the city's fires had burned themselves out. Arya Stark stood alone beneath the gaping scar of what had once been the throne room's great vaulted roof. The wind whistled through the iron lattice of broken rafters, carrying with it the distant cries of gulls and the salt-sharp tang of Blackwater Bay. Beneath her feet lay the melted ruin of the Iron Throne, still dark with the soot of dragon flame, warped into a grotesque, half-twisted monument to the old order. She nudged a blackened sword hilt with the toe of her boot and felt no thrill of victory, only the sober weight of something finished at last. The throne was dead, the crown meaningless. But the realm was very much alive, and the realm, she had come to believe, needed a different kind of ruler than any blade-edged seat could offer. Footsteps echoed across the cracked marble behind her. Slow, deliberate, accompanied by the soft rustle of silk. Arya knew the sound long before she turned. "You'll catch a chill lingering in the cold," Sansa said, though the air already shimmered with the first warm promise of summer. Her sister's auburn hair flickered like a pennant in the dappled light, and her eyes were pools of quiet scrutiny. Arya met that gaze without flinching. No more masks, no more faces. The truth was laid bare between them, easier to read now that the long shadow of winter had receded. "They won't like it," Sansa went on, drawing her cloak around slim shoulders. "Lord Royce, Ser Gendry, Half the River Lords even. A realm without a crown is no realm at all, they'll say." "Dandero." "A realm without a crown," Arya replied, "is one where men and women stand on their own legs instead of crawling to kneel." She bent, brushed ash from her hands and straightened. "If they want a symbol, let them look to the scars Daenerys left on these stones. Let them remember who forged the last throne and how it ended." A flicker of pain crossed Sansa's face. Memories of Jon, of fire and madness. But she inclined her head. Stark girls never chose easy roads. Her voice softened. "There will be war before there is peace. There is always war before peace." Arya pulled her gloves tight, feeling the leather creak. "The difference is what we do when the blades are drawn." They gathered in the council chamber that afternoon, a parchment-dry hush hovering above polished oak. Lords of every corner of Westeros filled the semicircle of carved chairs. Edmure Tully, with his graying beard, Brienne of Tarth resplendent in sapphire blue, Davos Seaworth plain and steady, Gendry Baratheon still awkward in velvet. A dozen others, some new, some ancient names given flesh and grievances. Arya walked to the center without ceremony, a slight girl beneath the weight of every gaze. No crown gleamed on her brow. No gilded sword rested at her hip. Needle alone was tucked beneath the folds of her dark tunic, but it was silent. And so was she until the room quieted. "Westeros has bled for crowns," she began. The words dropped like pebbles into a silent lake, rippling outward. "Daya for a crown, Robert for a crown, Joffrey, Tommen, Cersei, Daenerys. Aegon's forged throne sits in ruin, and each of their crowns has returned us here. Ruins upon ruins. I will not place another upon my head." Menand Shawand. Gendry shifted. "Then who shall rule?" "We shall rule," Arya said. "Not by crowns that break men's necks, but by counsel, by voice. Each of you has stood beneath Dragon's shadow and survived. The realm needs no queen. Only wardens who remember what fire feels like." Edmure frowned, face flushing. "A council without a leader is a beast without a heart." Arya's lips twitched. "Is that what hearts do? Command?" She let the question hang. They argued, of course. They were lords. Voices rose, years of custom clashing against a girl's audacity. Yet beneath all their indignation breathed the scent of something longed for, a chance to end the game they'd inherited. When the uproar dimmed, Davos cleared his throat. "If the Lady Arya claims no crown but calls us to levy justice together, I'll lend my voice." He met her eyes. Hard truths from a smuggler, clear as harbor light. Others followed. Brienne's calm vow, Gendry's hesitant but firm agreement, then murmured assent in growing waves. Not all were convinced, but enough. The council would stand, and Arya Stark, uncrowned, would anchor its center until the notion took root. That night she walked the corridors of the keep alone, torches guttering in the damp. Ghosts whispered from alcoves, visories screaming beneath molten gold, mad Eris with wildfire in his gaze. Ned Stark kneeling beneath the swing of a sword. Arya brushed past them. Her father had spoken once of the cost of duty. Now she knew the price in full, stamped on every flagstone. She paused by a narrow window, where the moonlight silvered broken rooftops. Somewhere out there rode men still loyal to Cersei, to the dream of lion banners. Somewhere, free folk tested the next marshes, and down in Dorne, princes schemed as they always had. The realm would not bend simply because she asked it. But bending was less vital than building. She slept beneath a roof that hissed with wind through splintered tiles, her dreams a tangle of wolf and dragon, of streets where children held wooden swords and dared to call each other king no longer. Dawn woke her early, and with dawn came the first letters. Ravens describing bandits who styled themselves rightful heirs, harvest shortages on the Mander, fleets of sell sails loosed from Lys. Problems, endless as the sea. She welcomed them. Each petty crisis pushed the realm a step farther from the singed memory of monarchy, forced the new council to act quickly, jointly, or fail together. And failure, they soon discovered, tasted worse without a scapegoat crown to blame. Arya rode north within the fortnight, ghosting through broken villages where wildfire scars still blackened stone. In one hamlet, a makeshift gallows sagged beside the well. 3 former gold cloaks dangled, swaying. A farmer leaned on his staff, sun-lined face impassive. "Law's law," he muttered as she passed. The man did not recognize her. She did not slow, but the sight chilled her more than the crisp summer breeze. When crowns topple, vengeance often rises in their place, wearing its own crude circlet of rope. Near the Trident, she found remnants of a Lannister levy, half-starved, clinging to red-crusted swords. Their captain, a boy no older than Rickon would have been, lifted his helm in trembling hands. Arya dismounted, faced them with empty palms. "The war is over," she said. "Go home." Blank stares answered her until she repeated the words slowly, gently. Not an order from a queen, but a statement from someone who had walked too long in war's shadow. Some wept, others fled into the fields. She left them their lives, and in return they left her their banners, tattered crimson fields that she burned by the roadside, sparks swirling upward like fireflies. At Winterfell, the gods' wood awaited sheathed in green gold, the heart trees' red leaves whispering as if gossiping about her return. Sansa met her under those branches, Bran's empty wheeled chair nearby, a hush of memories settling over them. The North had seceded once, but now its lady regarded the wider realm with measured calm. "Your council writes often," Sansa said, fingers tracing the carved face in the weirwood. "They ask if I'll sit among them. What would you advise?" Arya looked at the weirwood's bleeding eyes. "I'd advise you go. They need you. I need you." She hesitated, then added, "The North remembers its own wounds, but it also remembers what happens when it shuts its gates. Let the other realms see a Stark hand steady at the table." Sansa's smile was quiet and rueful. "You always hated tables. Only when they tried to tell me where to sit." Arya kicked at a pine cone, grin sudden and fierce. "Now I build them. No head, no foot, just sides enough for all." Bran arrived from his slow circuit of the grounds, eyes distant as constellations. He spoke little, but when he did, his words fell like pebbles into deep wells, rippling unseen. "A song ends when it must," he told Arya as they walked the battlements. "The next tune borrows the same notes but changes the key." She pondered that cryptic blessing long after she left, snow crunching under hooves though summer greened the hills. In his own way, Bran had given her permission to reshape the music of rule until familiar melodies held new meaning. The pain of transformation sharpened when she returned south. In the Reach, an army of hedge knights refused to disband, squatting in occupied keeps. The council proposed levying taxes to raise a royal, No, a communal, forced to Kikai. Arya vetoed it. We are not building a new king's army. Instead, she rode west with 40 volunteer outriders. Dothraki, unsullied, sworn swords of Stark and Baratheon, even one Dornish scion eager for glory. They fought skirmishes in orchards, parlayed under ivy-draped archways, and brokered amnesty in exchange for oaths sworn to the council, not to a lone monarch. Some rebels laid down arms. Others resisted and died. She wept for them in private, but accepted each loss as mortar in the fragile walls of a fairer realm. Word of a faceless queen without a crown traveled faster than ravens. Small folk whispered stories. Arya the Wolf Queen, Arya the No-Face, who carried justice in her shadow. She discouraged the myths, but myths bred in the cracks of uncertainty. Better a wolf than a dragon, the people said. Better a girl who slept in straw-filled inns beside the common folk than a ruler who burned cities. She learned to let the legends seed hope where decree could not. Yet darkness brewed beyond sight. Down in Old Town, where the citadel's spires pierced low clouds, archmasters grumbled over lost privileges. A conclave of highborn merchants petitioned for restoration of trade levies, once funneled directly to the crown. Who holds the purse strings if no crown does? They demanded. Arya appointed Davos master of ports and charged him to craft tariffs approved by the full council. He accepted with a sailor's grin, but sharks circled in the ledger margins, coinlords unaccustomed to oversight. The faith militant, rebuilt under Tommen yet crippled by Cersei's final vengeance, stirred amid the ruins of the Septuagint. Sparrows flocked to sermons preaching divine monarchy. 7 crowns for 7 gods, each a star in the firmament. Arya walked barefoot across the scorched plaza to meet their leader, a thin septon whose voice rang like hammered bronze. She listened to his sermon, then spoke softly. The gods need no crowns to rule hearts. Let them rule yours, Septon, and leave the realm's bodies to heal. He recoiled as though scorched, but something in her steady gaze, wolf-cool winter-bright, silenced his retort. Months bled into seasons as the council evolved from tentative convening to a living machine. Brienne drafted codes of law borrowed from every corner of Westeros, forging them into a shield for both high and low. Gendry oversaw restorations of city walls and aqueducts, his smith's hands eager to mend rather than wage war. Sansa arrived with a northern delegation, bringing grain from the Wolfswood's new farmlands, and a prudent voice in debates over resource allotment. Tyrion Lannister, pardoned but watched, served as skeptic in residence, pricking every proposal with barbed insight until it either deflated or hardened to iron. Arya found herself less a monarch than a keystone, unseen from certain angles, vital in holding the arch. She fought off assassination attempts. One dagger in the dark hall of Dragonstone, a poisoned cup in the rose gardens of Highgarden. Each danger reminded her that abolishing crowns did not abolish ambition. It merely forced ambition to don subtler shapes. She adopted no residence, moving instead from holdfast to holdfast on an erratic circuit designed by Bran's quiet counsel. A moving target was harder to hit, and a ruler seen in many places wove invisible threads of unity. In the disquiet of night, rides her mind wandered to faces lost. Gendry's rough laugh fading behind her as she spurred ahead, Jon's brooding silence swallowed by snows far beyond the wall, the hound's gruff wisdom, even Cersei's steel determination. She studied each memory like pages in a worn ledger, debts owed, lessons learned. When she slept, she dreamed of water dancing. Sirio's voice urging balance, movement, a sword's truth found in its journey more than in any final strike. One bitter autumn dawn, a raven arrived, bearing news that threatened to undo all. Euron Greyjoy's last surviving captains had rallied the Ironborn on Pike, proclaiming a queen of salt and rock to challenge Arya's lawless soft rule. They burned fishing villages along the northern shore and raided grain fleets, meant for King's Landing's winter stores. Hunger, if left unchecked, would breed rebellion faster than any sermon or sword. The council clamored for fleets, levies, emergency taxes. Arya paced the length of the map-strewn chamber until a thought crystallized. She called for parchment, quill, and her swiftest rider. Within hours, ravens beat their wings westward, carrying open offers of pardon and partnership to every Reaver lord who laid down arms. She pledged them seats at the council table, conditional on adopting laws that forbade reaving Westerosi shores. The promise was radical, perilous. Give pirates a voice in governance? Tyrion nearly choked on his wine. Yet Davos nodded, remembering his smuggler's past. Brienne's skeptical brow twitched, but she shrugged consent. Weeks dragged by with no answer. Grain reserves dwindled. Angry crowds gathered at gatehouses, chanting for bread. Arya distributed rations from the royal, communal, stores, ate the same coarse porridge, and waited. Finally, a dozen longships sailed into Blackwater Bay under banners newly sewn. A kraken entwined with a direwolf, wrought in gold thread on slate cloth. The ironborn captains disembarked bearing chests of stolen grain and 2 uneasy hostages from their own ranks, the first to stand trial under the council's maritime code. Justice, Arya decreed, would be meted by mixed jury, ironborn and mainlanders alike. The trial lasted a day, the sentence a month's hard labor rebuilding the wharves they'd destroyed. Some jeered at the leniency. Others marveled at the mingling of salt and river justice. Arya saw only the faint line of trust drawn, fragile as ice on spring water. Rumors swirled that Euron's supposed queen had drowned at sea, her rebellion collapsing into squabbles over salvage. Whether the kraken banners in her court carried Arya's letters to Pike, or whether divine chance had sunk the threat, none could say. Arya suspected a quiet hand from Varys rumored surviving little birds, children who owed her bread and safe roofs, yet she asked no questions. Let secrets remain secret, so long as bloodstains ceased to spread. Years, like tide, reshaped the realm. Children born after the fall of the throne grew to speak of councils as natural law. In King's Landing a towering white marble column rose where the Iron Throne had once sat, a monument not to power but to promise, etched with the names of every city and village that contributed stone. No figure crowned its peak. Instead, at its foot, Arya placed a small iron coin, the kind the faceless men once used to seal a bargain. A coin is nothing until accepted, their creed declared. The realm was nothing until its people accepted one another. She walked the column's perimeter on the first anniversary of its completion. Bakers hawked seed cakes. Children spun tales of heroes who carried no banners, only ideals. She paused to watch a group of mummers stage a play. A wolf who refused a crown of thorns and taught the forest animals to rule in council. The script was crude, but its sentiment clear enough to draw laughter and applause. Arya smiled, shook her head, and melted into the crowd. She felt the pulse of something living, greater than any single ruler, a heartbeat drumming beneath cobbles and thatch. But peace is a plant that grows best under watchful gardeners. She recruited scribes to travel the roads recording townsfolk grievances, turning those records into actionable reforms. She encouraged the Citadel to establish satellite libraries, mobile wagons bearing books to holdfasts that had never housed a raven tower. Maesters grumbled but relented when she threatened to found a new order of scholars among the wildlings, funded by Ironbank coin that preferred growth to stalemate. Everywhere she went, the question resurfaced. Why trust a girl who refuses to be queen? Her answer never changed. Because I refuse. One crisp winter morning, as snowflakes drifted through the capital like soft white ash, she met with Bran beneath the still roofless throne room, kept that way by choice, open to wind and sky. He spoke of threads of time, of futures branching from each breath. You cannot see them, he said, but you can choose. Often there is no difference. Arya touched the stone where the throne's melted silhouette remained, a dragon's shadow forever caught. I choose today, she murmured. Let tomorrow be their choice. She meant the realm's children, those who would inherit a land no longer bound by iron and blade. Old age crept slowly for Arya Stark, The restlessness of her blood refused to surrender. Even as lines etched her weather-toughened face, she sparred with recruits in the courtyard, advising them to strike fast, to dance with steel rather than hammer. She hosted feasts not in grand halls but in street markets, where lords found themselves elbow to elbow with bakers and sailors, sampling spiced Dornish stew ladled from the same iron pot. She never married, though rumors flared. A Dornish princess glimpsed on a balcony at dawn, a Taroshi healer who traveled with her for a season. Love was a field she walked lightly, unwilling to root herself lest the realm's foundation crack under weight of expectation. She wrote letters to the Citadel, urging study of Valyrian steel, not as weapon but as craft worth preserving. She dispatched envoys to distant Korth to negotiate silk routes favorable to small merchants. When plague threatened Gulltown, she sailed north herself aboard Davos' flagship, standing on the prow with hair whipping like a black banner, carrying casks of fresh lime juice and quarantine edicts that saved thousands. In every crisis she found a moment to ask a fisherman about tides, a child about dreams, small truths anchoring grand designs. Her greatest test came not from blades or gold, but from words. A faction of young nobles, born after the last flames of war, argued the council was too slow, too compromised. They petitioned for a rotating crown, 1-year kingship, symbolic yet crowned nonetheless, craving that glittering circle of power like magpies covet silver. Debates raged in open squares. Some small folk, weary of endless deliberation, began to nod along. Arya listened, weighing speed against stability. She drafted a compromise. Local assemblies empowered to legislate minor matters, speeding governance while preserving the council for realm-wide questions. She journeyed city to city, explaining the plan, not from a dais, but atop crates in marketplaces. If you want a crown, she told them, stand beneath the winter sky and feel the weight of stars. There are crowns enough for all who dream of them. But dreams don't plow fields or mend bridges. Work does. It was not poetry, yet it stuck like seeds in furrows. The fad of crowns withered by spring. Time has a way of turning revolution into tradition, and so Arya resolved to leave before her presence curdled into legend calcified. 2 decades after the fall of the throne, she summoned the council. Gray streaked Gendry's beard. Sansa's eyes carried both wisdom and sorrow. Brian's steps slowed but remained deliberate. Arya laid a single dagger on the table, its blade forged in Valyrian steel, its hilt shaped like a direwolf. "It's time I crossed the sea," she announced. Stunned silence followed. "Westeros is yours. Keep it free." Now. They argued, pleaded, strategized. But she was firm. She had never worn a crown. She would not wear roots. That night the city held a vigil, torches flickering along the streets as bells tolled a farewell. Yet she slipped away before dawn, boarding a single-masted vessel, bound for uncharted waters west of the Sunset Sea. Only Sansa embraced her at the dock, tears bright on cheeks. "Right," she whispered. "If I find words worthy," Arya promised. She looked back once as the sail billowed, saw the spireless skyline crowned by starlight alone, and felt a fierce, quiet pride. The ship cut through dark water, prow aimed at horizons no map dared name. Arya bared her head to the salt wind, eyes reflecting dawn's first fire. Behind her, Westeros breathed, a realm unchained, still fragile, wondrous in its uncertainty. Ahead, the world stretched vast and unbeaten. She tasted freedom on her tongue, tasted tomorrow, and smiled like a girl of 15 again, sword slim in hand, ready to dance the world into new shapes. The wind whispered across the deck, one voice among many now, no longer demanding fealty, only inviting discovery. And Arya Stark, uncrowned and undaunted, answered with silent promise. The realm would hold, and so would she, wherever the next horizon called. The ship skimmed the wrinkled slate of the Sunset Sea for weeks, its single square sail breathing like a wolf's chest under the push and pull of fickle winds. Arya felt every creak of pine beneath bare feet, A low murmur of hunger and hope she answered with steady hands on the tiller when the helmsman slept. Only 6 souls crewed the Storm Dancer. Old Davos' nephew Tom, the tall, too silent Lyseni twins, who spoke only to each other, a Myrish girl named Dell, whose songs carried whip-sharp sorrow, a one-eyed cook from White Harbor, and Arya herself, signing aboard under no name. She spent dawns tying knots and dusk sharpening knives, muscle memory of 100 camps sharpening her senses as the horizon unrolled like an unwritten page. When storms slammed down with the violence of tumbling towers, she lashed herself to the mast and sang the words Sirio taught her, words whose root she no longer knew, but whose cadence steadied her pulse. Lightning carved blind scars in black clouds. Rain hammered the deck until spars snapped and sails ripped wide. She crawled across slick planks to haul canvas in, the Lyseni chanting prayers to a sea bride until their throats cracked. They survived by breaths alone, waterlogged and shivering, and in the silent calm that followed, Arya found herself laughing, sharp, astonished laughter that ripped from her chest like bird call. They had claimed the sea's fury and still stood, small but unbroken. One night, when the moon hung like a chipped obsidian coin over gently heaving swells, Dell approached with a cracked lute and a question in her dark eyes. "Your blade," she murmured, gesturing to needle resting across Arya's knees. "Is it a story or a silence?" The difference mattered to sailors who bartered tales for luck. Arya turned the thin blade in moonlight, thought of her father's work-worn hands gifting it under Winterfell snows, thought of Braavosi waters and Frey twins, thought of the last king's blood steaming on cobbles. "It is both," she said. Dell only nodded, plucked a minor chord, and began to sing of 2 sisters who set the sky alight with rival fires. The tune snagged in rigging like wind, and Arya closed her eyes, feeling the world grow as wide as the water beneath. Weeks stretched into months. They charted nothing but rough points on vellum, all previous maps ending in drawings of serpents or falling stars. They passed islands where basalt cliffs reared like broken castle walls. On one mist-blurred morning they anchored beside a shore of pink sand. Spiked trees twisted upward, branches dripping with luminous pods that burst under touch, releasing clouds of glittering spores. The Lyseni twins harvested a basketful for spice, but Arya tasted only a single grain and felt her tongue bloom with memory. Wolfell's Den taverns, lemon cakes shared with Sansa, Jon ruffling her hair in Winterfell's courtyard. Tears sprang sudden and unbidden. She spat the seed overboard and did not taste again. Farther west, they discovered waters warm enough that steam rose at dawn. Great silverfish breached, scales flashing like hot coins. One thudded onto deck during a squall, flailing until Arya slit its gills. Inside its belly they found a human finger bone carved with spirals, a relic of some forgotten wanderer swallowed whole. The sight unnerved even Tom the Tall, who whispered of mer-witches dragging sailors to cities of glass on the seabed. They tossed the bone back into the dark and set watch in pairs, lamps burning blue-green from powdered pods, Dell mixed to ward off ill luck. At last, when ration barrels stood nearly empty and hope had thinned to ragged thread, the crow's nest cried, "Land!" Dawn painted the horizon gold as jagged peaks surfaced like fangs. Hours later, they sailed into the embrace of a vast bay, ringed by cliffs veined in red crystal. Water churned milky from silt, tinted rose by morning's fire. They toasted the sight with the last of their citrus, then readied the longboat. Arya insisted on scouting first, dragging the keel across soft gray sand until her boots sank ankle-deep in fine grit that smelled faintly of copper. A hush blanketed the shore. No gulls, no wind through pine. Only the whisper of the sea pulling away. She knelt, pressed her palm to the ground, feeling the unfamiliar heartbeat of a continent no Westerosi had ever walked. Or perhaps they had once, in elder days, lost to legend. She half expected to see a children's face peek from crystal fissures. Instead, silence greeted her, vast and waiting. They erected a lean-to from sailcloth, stocked with what supplies remained. Tom scouted freshwater east along a low ridge. Arya took Dell and the cook west. They found spiral shells the size of helms littering dunes, each lined with opalescent ridges. Dell lifted one to her ear, listening for rumor of storms. Arya watched the cook carve a chunk of shell, pockets filling with shards of pearl that shimmered in dusk. They returned to camp to discover the Lyseni twins had vanished. Footprints led into tidewater and ended. A single scuffed knife lay abandoned. No struggle, no blood. Waves erased the prints under silver starlight. They waited through the night, torches guttering, but wind carried only hollow cries of unseen creatures. When dawn bled across the bay, no bodies washed ashore. Fear threatened to cleave morale. The cook muttered of drowned gods. Tom clutched a talisman carved from the fish bone they had discarded. Arya, remembering blind alleyways in Bravos where fear was an enemy dressed like a friend. Spoke sharp to them. We survive by eyes forward. She organized watch, ration duties. Tom mended mainmast spars. The cook foraged edible kelp. Dell charted stars. She explored inland alone. The red-veined cliffs narrowed into a canyon where metallic dust shimmered on every surface. Striations in stone reflected sun gleams, fracturing light into prismatic shards that left her half-blind. She moved slow, ears straining for predator growl. Instead, faint murmurs echoed, water trickling deep underground. She followed the sound to a fissure and descended. Until she reached a pool, black as obsidian yet mirror still. At its center floated a sphere of milky glass the size of a child's head, glowing from within with pulses like heartbeats. Memory stirred. Bran's tales of dragonglass, Maester Luwin's orbs of far-seeing. She touched the sphere. Vision ripped open. She stood not in a cave but high above Westeros, a hawk's view of coastline she knew in bone. King's Landing's column gleamed white, but war banners ringed it, sigils new and old, snarling for blood. Snow sprouted across the neck in unnatural flurries. The trident ran red. A Dayrulf banner flapped torn above Winterfell's gate. Voices rose. Sansa's voice, weary and commanding, drowning under clamor. Then wing beats. Great ravens surged against a blood-red sky, their bellies aflame. The realm teetered. She staggered back, gagging. The sphere bobbed, glow dimming. An echo of a voice she had not heard in years whispered from the darkness. Joan's voice, hoarse and distant. The song never ends. Panic hammered her ribs. Was this illusion or warning? She clenched her jaw, forced breath slow. Information, not prophecy. Bran had taught that future's branch. She chose. Arya returned to camp before dusk. Dell caught her expression and stiffened. Storm? She asked. Arya shook her head. Change of tide, she said. They gathered by the fireless pit. Wood scarce, they burned kelp bricks that stank like rot. Arya shared what she saw in clipped words. Tom frowned. If it's true, we sail back. We cannot abandon our home when strife brews. The cook spit into sand. Home never wanted me. Westeros can eat itself. Dell regarded Arya with quiet, razor attention. The choice sits with the one who urged us beyond maps, she said. What would you have us do? Arya felt the weight of the realm even here, half a world away. She thought of children learning to speak of councils instead of crowns. She thought of Sansa's calm in chaos, of Gendry's steady hammer. She had promised the realm could hold without her. But promises cracked under heat of blade. Perhaps her leaving had ripened unrest. Power often rose to fill voids. She closed her eyes, pictured the column in King's Landing, the coin at its base. The realm was a bridge, and she had been its keystone. Remove the stone, and the arch might shift until new weight distributed. Yet if tremors threatened collapse, the builder must return. We sail east, she said. The decision rang simple, final. Tom exhaled relief. The cook cursed. Del quietly folded her chart. We leave at dawn, Arya added. Gather what provisions you can. The sea may not grant safe passage twice. Menin? They spent 2 days refitting Storm Dancer, patching sails with kelp cloth and weaving nets for fresh catch. Arya returned to the cave once more. The sphere now glowed faint, drained by her touch. She lifted it, surprised by its lightness, like blown glass. She wrapped it in sailcloth. Knowledge must travel back. As she turned to leave, she glimpsed runes freshly etched in stone near the pool. They spelled a single word in the script of the children: balance. She traced the grooves, cold and precise, and whispered thanks. The Lyseni remained missing. They carved 2 small cairns of shells on Dune Crest, Del singing a threnody in a language with snarling consonants. Arya added a pebble to each cairn. Small tribute to sailors lost to mysteries of first landfall. The sea greeted them with placid indifference for 7 days, then flung storms like giants hurling boulders. They lost the foremast to a whiplash gust. Tom Jury rigged a stump and square scrap, while Arya lashed the tiller in a crosswind that shrieked like falcon talons. The cook broke his arm when a spar swung free. Del splinted it with dagger-thin shards of shell and sang to muffle pain. They ran short on fresh water, resorting to stills that collected rain. At night, Arya held the glass sphere close, praying the visions had not been warped by her own doubt. She dreamed of dire wolves prowling halls of broken stone, their howls blending with the crackle of wildfire. At last they sighted gulls, then the green arm of a peninsula. Arya recognized the shape, the shield islands off the reach. Familiar stars glimmered. The world felt smaller, heavier. They anchored at Green Shield, its beaches lined with tents of refugees driven south by bandits. A tangle-haired girl guided Arya up the dunes to a makeshift infirmary, where a maester stitched wounds by torchlight. Tales spilled, crops burned, raiders wearing old Lannister crimson, a sellsword company calling itself the King's Fist. The council's authority, once steady, now debated. Rumors of a pretender prince, grandson of Stannis perhaps, rallied discontented soldiers. Arya felt a pang of fury. "Where is the council?" she demanded. The maester shrugged, weary. "Bickering in Old Town," he said. "Sansa Stark rides from Winterfell to mend the breach, but roads are perilous." Arya pressed coin into his hand, left the canvas ward, gathered her crew. "We sail upriver to Old Town," she said. "Tom, see the ship provisioned." They left Stormdancer at anchor and rowed hired fisher skiffs upriver to Bitterbridge, then commandeered half-broken horses north toward the Honeywine. Signs of turmoil dotted every mile: burned granaries, toll stations manned by brigands, wagons overturned. Yet small folk still recognized her. Some touched her gloved hand, others spat at the ground, blaming absent counsel for chaos. She accepted both with equal silence. Anger would not rebuild barns. Outside Old Town's walls they faced a cordon of guards, banners of a crescent crown over sword. By order of Prince Rennick Baratheon, all travelers must pledge fealty or turn back, the captain barked. Arya nudged her horse forward. "Tell your prince the realm answers to council, not crown," she said. The captain scoffed. "Councils dissolved. They argue inside the starry sept, while Rennick feeds the hungry." Behind him, refugees received chunks of bread from armored men. Arya studied the scene. Good deeds often cloaked ambition. She ordered Del and the cook to slip through back alleys and find loyalists. Tom remained as escort, while Arya rode to the gates. Guards stripped weapons, needle-sheathed, hidden against her spine, escaped notice. Inside, the streets swelled with banners, stag within gilded sunburst. Vendors hawked Rennick's likeness minted on tin medallions. Children cheered a parade of sellswords handing out sugar sticks. The city thrummed with uneasy celebration. At the Septi's broad doors stood Sansa, cloak torn by travel, face netted with exhaustion. Relief flickered at Arya's arrival, but quickly melted into stern urgency. "They're voting," she hissed. "Rennick demands coronation by dusk. If they hand him the crown, the council's mandate shatters. They entered a nave crammed with nobles. High towers in pale green, Tarlus bristling, iron-born delegates glaring. Rennick Baratheon strode the dais, auburn-bearded, clad in black leather-trimmed gold. He spoke of order, swift justice, strong leadership. Each word echoed Robert, but hollow. When Arya stepped into candlelight, murmurs rippled. Rennick's eyes flicked to her, surprise quickly masked. "Lady Stark returned from self-exile," he said. "Will you kneel to the crown you abandoned?" "I bow only to the realm," Arya replied, voice carrying. "And the realm chose counsel. You raise a crown over ashes." Rennick's mouth curved. Ashes warm when fanned. People crave something tangible. Tangibility never saved a starving child. Arya moved closer. "You dangle bread bought with treasuries meant for bridges. You feed today to chain tomorrow." Mender Alwyn. Cheers from his men, murmurs of agreement from high seats. She felt the tide sway. She reached into her satchel, withdrew the glass sphere. Light pulsed through nave shadows, reflections dancing across vaulted stone. "This holds vision of what crowns bring," she said, lowering it for all to see. "But more than vision, it records. I ask each banner to witness. If today you trade counsel for crown, mark whose children pay tomorrow." She set the sphere on the altar. It flickered, projecting shimmering tableau. Ruins of kings landing aflame, corpses in crownless dust, children gathering ash instead of grain. Gasps burst. Rennick spun, anger sputtering. "Sorcery," he barked. "Trickery by one who fled responsibility." Sansa stepped beside Arya. "She sought knowledge to guard us. While we squabbled, threats grew. Crowns cannot shield us from unknown seas or future storms." Her words gathered gravitas from every hardship Northerners endured. A Tarly lord rose next, voice wavering but firm. "The realm bled for one council. I will not bleed for another king." One by one others followed, council fractures knitting under shared memory. Rennick's support shrank like cloth in rain. He snarled, drew blade. Guards advanced. Arya moved first, needles slipping into her hand like second skin. She parried his swing, sidestepped, cut hamstring shallow. Enough to topple. The hall erupted. Brienne, gray-haired but stone-steady, waded through to disarm Rennick's guards. No fatalities, only bruises. Rennick, kneeling, glared upward. "You doomed them," he spat. Arya shook her head. "I trust them." The council reconvened at dawn, voting to reaffirm assembly rule. They amended charter. Rotating leadership pairs elected yearly, ensuring no single keystone bore full weight. Sansa and Davos were first. North and South. Experience and empathy. Arya declined position, citing long absence, but pledged to serve as envoy to distant shores, mapping threats and opportunities. After Rennick's supporters dispersed, some pardoned, others fined, the council turned to wounds within. Grain tariffs rebalanced. Levy reforms promised training and pay for border defense rather than private armies. Arya spent long nights with maesters transferring knowledge gleaned from the glass sphere. Mineral jets under red-veined cliffs that might power forge engines. Medicinal spores that sharpen recall but risk memory storms. She protected details until trust earned, remembering dangers of wildfire secrets. On the steps of the Citadel, she met Tyrion. Hair silvering, eyes still quick. "I never doubted you'd return," he said, sipping Hippocras. "One cannot found a new dance then skip halfway through." She smirked. "I only changed the music." He toasted invisible stars. Storm Dancer required months of repair. Meanwhile, Arya accepted a small raven-winged sloop from Gendry's royal dockyards, sleeker, armed with ballistae. She named it Wolfsong. Ton joined as first mate, Del as navigator. The cook, now healed, swapped galley for quartermaster. Before they sailed, Arya walked King's Landing's column once more, kneeling at the coin she'd left years ago. Beside it now rested dozens of tokens. Seashells, forged nails, scraps of embroidered cloth. The people had added their own vows. She placed the glass sphere there, encased now in iron lattice for public viewing. Let visions remind them. Night fell stained with orange lanterns. Arya lingered on the quay where Sansa waited, cloak clasped in stark silver. "Will you come back?" Sansa asked. "When needed," Arya promised. They embraced, wolves sharing warmth. As she stepped aboard Wolfsong, sails snapping crisp in salt breeze, she felt no weight of crownless realm, only the thrill of wind-chased horizons and the steady drum of oars as crew pushed away. The sea welcomed her a second time, older but unbroken, her story woven now, not as keystone but as wandering thread stitching realms, seen and yet unseen. Beyond the breakwater, Del unfurled maps, scratching rumor of summer-sea archipelagos, where dragons might roost, of jade seaports trading silks for ardent steel. Arya traced each route, heart steady. Balance was no final state but motion. Sword and ship, council and crownless land, past and future. She raised her eyes to stars wheeling overhead. Same constellations that guided Nymeria's fleet, that watched Aegon's dragons. She whispered a prayer to no gods. May those stars guide not kings nor queens, but all wandering hearts seeking place to stand unshackled. Wolfsong heeled into dark, sails luminous under moon. Arya Stark stood at bow with needle sheathed, palm on railing, hair whipping free. The realm behind might quake yet again, but people would rise to meet tremors, not slaves of crowns, but citizens of voice. Ahead, unknown coasts shimmered like promise. She inhaled salt and starlight, exhaled fear. The dance continued, and she, ever lightfoot, stepped forward into uncharted measure, a smile curving sharp as a blade's first gleam of dawn. Cloud dimmed the sky on the third week of Wolfsong's passage southward, a bruised haze that turned the rolling water an oily green. Arya paced the deck, recalling old Nan's tales of tempests, birthing leviathans. And though she believed none of them, she ordered ballast shifted, canvases reefed, ropes checked twice. Sailors obeyed with purposeful calm. They had learned that storms respected diligence. By evening the first fat drops pelted the deck, and wind screamed through rigging like a pack of wolves, baying for prey. Lightning stitched the horizon, illuminating crests that rose like white mountains, and fell with thunderous crashes. Del lashed herself at the helm. Her hair plastered against her cheeks, lips mouthing charts no quill had yet set to parchment. Tom bellowed commands that vanished in the gale. Arya tied down the tiller beside Del, then scrambled forward to secure the bowlines. Every knot she made felt like stitching in a wound, tight, necessary, soaked with salt sting. The squall raged 2 nights and a day, tossing Wolfsong like a sparrow in talons. Waves slammed the hull, cracked the aft rail, and swept the cook into black churn. Arya's fingers closed around his ankle at the last instant, digging so hard he cried out even as she hauled him clear. When calm finally returned, it was not gentle. The sea flattened with eerie speed, leaving the deck covered in seaweed, dead jellyfish, and one shattered spar dangling by sinew-thin lines. Del whispered that such sudden stillness signaled deep water trenches, where storms rested and gathered strength. Arya ignored omen talk, but she felt a pressure in her ears, like a world holding breath. At dawn they sighted shapes on the horizon, quills of jagged stone erupting from a swirl of mist. The charts Del relied on ended far east of here. Nothing she possessed hinted these peaks existed. They approached cautiously, oars dipping in rhythmic splashes. As distance shrank, the peaks revealed themselves to be enormous pillars of basalt, each cathedral tall, honeycombed by archways through which tide surged with booming echoes. Seabirds nested high on ledges, their cries strangely muted, as if the air itself was thickened by unseen force. Arya directed the crew to anchor in a natural harbor carved between 2 pillars. The cove shimmered. The water glowed with flecks of pale gold that clung to their boots when they waded ashore, dissolving into sparks of warmth against skin. The island's interior stunned them. Broad meadows rolled beneath towering trees, whose bark flexed iridescent blues and purples. Vines bore cobs of crimson grain, and small mammals, rabbit-like save for long gliding membranes, sprang from branch to branch. No ruins, no boats, no signal of people. They advanced beneath the canopy in wary wonder, until Del hissed and pointed. Ahead, etched into a slant of rock, sprawled symbols identical to those Arya had seen in the cave pool's runes. Slashes, spirals, a stylized wolf head flanked by 7 dots. Beneath that, a carving of a ship parted by a line of light. Tom traced the wolf with calloused finger. "Marks like these live on runestones in Skagos," he murmured. Never translated. They camped near a spring whose water tasted faintly of pomegranate. As dusk fell, they built a ring of stones for a cooking fire. Arya set a watch, though no threat revealed itself. Moonlight on the glade produced phantom glimmers, motes that rose, drifted, and burst with soft pops. The cook muttered that the island dreamed, and its dreams took shape. Near midnight, Arya left the camp, needled by restless curiosity. She walked until the trees thinned, and the glade opened onto a cliff overlooking the southern sea. There, seated on a fallen trunk, was a woman. Her hair fell straight and moon-white to her waist. Her face held lines yet glowed with an ageless calm. She wore a cloak woven of feathers and scales, its hues shifting like dusk on snow. Arya approached in silence, yet the woman spoke first in a voice soft but resonant. "Child of wolves, why journey you so far from Packlands?" The accent bent Westerosi syllables, in ways reminiscent of Bravos yet older. Still, Arya's hand drifted to needle, but she did not draw. "To learn," she answered. "To keep my realm from forgetting what crowns wrought." The woman's smile curved like dawn's first edge. "Crown or council, all roots dangle from power's branch. You seek balance, yet balance lies not in iron or ink, but in understanding the weave beneath." She lifted a palm, and in it lay a coin identical to the faceless coin Arya had once carried to Bravos, except its surface rippled as if liquid silver. "Many paths twist from this shore," the woman said. "Choose the wrong, and storm follows." Arya reached, hesitated. She sensed the gesture was a test, not a gift. "What path do you propose?" she asked. The woman rose, cloak shifting to pearl gray. "One where west and east remember, they are one cloth. Dragonfire sundered them. Wolf song may stitch." She inclined her head toward the island's heart. "In the hollow, the first forge sleeps. Wake it, and steel will sing truths tongue cannot." With that, she stepped backward, and dissolved into mist, scattering like dandelion seed across the moonlit grass. Arya returned to camp shaken but resolute. She roused Del and Tom, recounting the encounter. Skepticism flickered in their eyes, yet neither doubted her tale. The island's strangeness bred belief more readily than the faith of the 7. At dawn they followed a river inland. Hours of climbing brought them to a crater encircled by pillars of fused glass. Centered on a dais lay an anvil of black stone. Tools rusted beyond use ringed its base, but the anvil itself glowed faintly from within, veins of ruby light pulsing to some buried rhythm. Del knelt to examine runes lining the rim. Again the wolf symbol. Again the 7 dots. Beneath, an 8th dot newly carved perhaps days before, the groove still sharp. "Your arrival was foreseen," Del whispered. Arya touched the anvil. It warmed under her palm. Visions did not claim her eyes this time. Instead a hum resonated through bone, a chord like low song. The cook, watching wide-eyed, fell to his knees. Tom crossed wrists across chest. "Sailor's salute." Arya drew needle. Steel thrummed, an answering note higher. "Alive." She laid the blade on the anvil. Light rippled out, swept over meadow, and the forge awakened. From vents in the earth, columns of faint vapor rose, carrying motes of copper fire that drifted like sparks. The anvil's glow subsided, but needle's edge gleamed brighter. Free of nicks earned in decades. Arya sensed something more. The blade's weight subtly changed, balance perfect. She sheathed it, feeling a promise sealed. The forge then fell silent, as if returning to long slumber. Del exhaled reverently. "Whatever power lived here served you tonight." Arya nodded grimly. Let's hope it serves the realm as well. They departed the island at sunrise, laden with sacks of red grain, amphorae of spring water, and a single shard of glass-fused stone Tom pried loose, souvenir or talisman they could not yet name. As sails caught wind, a shiver ran through Arya. On the cliff above, the white-haired woman watched, cloak billowing, expression unreadable. Weeks of fair weather carried them north along the Jade Sea's uncharted rim. They bartered with fishermen, who stared at Westerosi faces, as though at ghosts, trading smoked eel for woven sail patches. They skirted volcanic chains, whose plumes stained horizon crimson dark-dyed. Del recorded every cape and inlet. Yet each new landfall weighed on Arya's thoughts of Westeros. She dreamed uneasy dreams. Sansa standing upon a snowy battlement, flanked by shadows and crowns of ice. The glass sphere cracking on cobbles, bleeding golden sand. Ironborn ships bearing wolf-kraken flags, sinking beneath flame-kissed waves. She woke each time with heart pounding and whispered to herself that futures bend. At last they passed the smoking straits and angled west toward Qarth's far cousin ports, where trade winds would speed their return to Blackwater Bay. There, on a night of calm seas and radiant stars, Wolfsong encountered a vessel adrift. A broad-beamed carrack, flying no banner, sails shredded. Arya hailed, no answer. They came aside under oars, threw hooks, and boarded. The decks were slick with tarry residue. Cargo hatches gaped. In the great cabin they found bodies, sailors and passengers alike. Slumped at tables, no wounds, skin blackened at lips. The cook sniffed a goblet, recoiled. Shaded of the evening, he rasped. Arya's gut tightened. That drink belonged to warlocks of Qarth. Its presence here implied sorcery beyond the usual intrigues. Del found a lone survivor, a boy curled behind barrels. He babbled in Valyrian slanted common, telling of blue-lipped priests who'd promised safe passage to Westeros carrying casks of purple dream wine for a buyer in Old Town. Mid-voyage, the priests forced crew to drink. Madness took them. The priests laughed until night when sails burst into azure flame and burned, yet left no wood char. The priests then leapt into the sea, chanting. The boy lived by refusing the cup. Arya took him aboard Wolfsong, burned the carrack to cinders, and kept one charred log that glowed faint blue at its heart. The boy, Yandri, shared that the priests whispered a name while dying. Rennick, the usurper Arya had faced. Del muttered curses. Arya pieced the puzzle. Rennick's bread and pageantry funded perhaps by Qarthine warlocks seeking foothold. Their magic might yet linger in the realm, fueling other fires. The revelation urged speed. When at last, the cliffs of Dragonstone loomed gray against rain clouds, a raven soared from lookouts, and within hours, skiffs rowed out bearing council banners to escort them upriver to the capital. Arya's return inspired both joy and tension. Word had spread of Rennick's defeat, but smaller princelings mimicked his bid. The realm teetered, fatigued by governance done by debate in turbulent times. In the sprawling atrium beneath the column, Arya found Davos leaning on a cane, beard whiter than she remembered, but grin unabated. "Thought you'd gone to the world's end," he said. She clasped his wrist. "Turned out the world bends rather than ends?" She replied. The council convened in emergency session. Sansa presided beside a weary but resolute Gendry. Brienne, now head of the city watch, stood sentinel. Reports were grim. Southern harvest blight, banditry in the Kingswood, whispers of cults drinking indigo liquor promising visions of a true crown. Arya presented the charred log and Yandri's testimony. The maesters recoiled at the faint hum the log emitted. Tyrion suggested conflagrating every cask of Qarthine imports. Davos countered that warlocks dealt in illusions and fear as much as potions. Sansa listened, fingers steepled, then turned to Arya. "You walked in their shadows. What counsel?" Arya laid needle on the table, its reforged sheen casting dancing reflections. Power roots in wonder. The warlocks sell it, the desperate buy. We must, for a time, outwonder them. She proposed a bold plan, a grand assembly in the capital, open to commoners and lords alike, showcasing miracles of learning. Glass candles relit by maesters, map scrolls from beyond the sunset, red grain that flourished in poor soil. A festival not of crowns but of shared marvels. If the people felt invited into awe, they might spurn the predatory allure of cultic secrets. The council hesitated. Expense, security, precedent. But momentum built. Brienne pledged the watch. Gendry offered forges to craft, display wonders. Davos swore to bring Spicetown merchants bearing exotic fruits. Maesters protested until Arya produced the shard of fused glass. Proof of ancient craft they could study only in exchange for participation. Sansa set the date at midsummer. 3 moons hence. Ravens flew across kingdoms, bearing invitations sealed not with sigils, but with a wolf-embossed coin, echo of the one at the column's base. Preparation transformed the capital. Carpenters erected pavilions along the Street of Sisters. Painters adorned archways with scenes of wolves guiding ships. Refugees found work weaving banners. Smiths forged spinning astrolabes. Septas brewed healing syrups from crimson grain. Even pockets of dissent joined, seeing profit or novelty in spectacle. No ruler commanded attendance. Curiosity drew them. On the festival's eve, Arya walked the column plaza. Stalls gleamed with lanterns. Children chased clockwork birds carved by Cohoric tinkerers. An iron-born clan roasted seaboar beside Dornish vintners, uncorking sweet fire wine. She felt heartbeat like hum, same timbre as the island forge, rippling through crowd. Wonder indeed. Opening dawn, Sansa spoke briefly. A welcome, a reminder that the realm thrived by shoulders, not crowns. Davos unveiled a ship's compass, fashioned of magnetite and pearl, that pointed always home. Tyrion demonstrated colored lenses projecting moving images on silk, a reimagining of Braavosi shadowplay. The maesters lit 3 glass candles whose flames flickered green and gold, signifying knowledge carried across ages. Del unrolled her maps of uncharted coasts, her quill tracing arcs of future trade. Arya stepped forward last, holding the charred blue log. She spoke of warlock manipulation, of fear's lure. Then, before thousands, she plunged the log into a brazier. Blue flames leapt, roaring, yet within them her figure remained unburned, protected by a powder of red sand, Tom scattered at the wood's base. Gasps met the sight. She withdrew the charred core. Flame dead. Illusion, she declared, breaking the log to reveal mundane wood around a small vial of chemical tincture. The warlocks trade deception. We trade truth. Which serves you longer? The crowd erupted in applause. That night, beneath lantern constellations, Arya felt the realm unite in something beyond politics. Yet in back alleys, cultists hissed at lost converts. In a cellar near Flea Bottom, a warlock robed in indigo pledged retaliation. Balance, Arya reminded herself, always swayed. In the weeks that followed, grain blight eased thanks to Red Sea distribution. Bandit captains accepted amnesty for seats in local assemblies. Carthene casks were intercepted and destroyed at ports. But rumors grew stranger. White shadows glimpsed in haunted forest, children dreaming of a horn whose blast shook the sky, wildlings whispering of ice coffins cracking open under midnight sun. Bran, visited in Winterfell, confirmed that tremors quaked the far north beyond the wall, patterns unseen since the long night. He asked Arya to meet him at the Weirwood. The old gods, he said, stirred. Arya rode north with a small retinue, Brienne, still formidable, Del for record, Tom for sword, Yandri seeking purpose. Their journey felt return to origins, riverlands blooming, yet castles scarred. Crossing Moat Cailin under rain, Arya tasted salt on wind, not sea, but ancient tears. Bran received them in Winterfell's Godswood. Snow-dusted branches though midsummer warmed south. His eyes, white film veiling green, fixed somewhere beyond. The wall between breaths thins, he murmured. Life and death, light and dark. Council and crown. Your forge awoke not just steel. He touched the heart tree. Crimson sap oozed like fresh blood. We must close cracks before winter's echo arrives. He spoke of a rite lost in children lore, weaving spirits of weirwood and dragon glass to seal rifts. For that, they required obsidian roots from dragonstone and living sap from an unfelled heart tree outside Westeros. Arya realized the island forge's pillars were petrified weirwood mutated by sea fire. She vowed to return, harvest sap, and meet Bran at the wall's shattered Eastwatch Tower come new moon of first frost. She rode south again, this time gathering aid. Gendry to cast obsidian anchors, Davos to provision fleet, Sansa to rally northern clans. She requested Tyrion craft a treaty binding all houses to mutual defense, signed beneath neither banner nor crown, but by drop of blood each. Skeptics balked. Arya countered that the treaty meant survival beyond politics. Slowly, signatures filled. Wolfsong sailed once more with greater crew. Smiths, maesters, singers, whose chants would steady rowing rhythms. They reached the Basalt Isle after storms that seemed to avoid them, as if currents guided by unseen hands. But the white-haired woman was absent, and the forge dormant. They located living pockets of weirwood beneath cliffs, pale roots pulsing under rock. Maesters tapped sap with crystal vials. Green-gold liquid shimmered like aurora. Del recorded runes newly etched, the wolf symbol splitting into two intertwined spirals, balance and union. Return voyage proved perilous. Warlock corsairs, blue sails billowing, tracked them near Lys. A running battle ensued over foaming seas. Gendry's new ballistae loosed quarrels tipped with wildfire glass. Flames of emerald devoured enemy decks. Arya leapt aboard the lead corsair, needle flickering in moonlight, and carved through startled acolytes before setting powder stores alight. She escaped on rope. Swing an instant before explosion lit night, brighter than dawn. Corsair fleet scattered. They reached Eastwatch 2 nights before frost moon. Brigades of free folk, Night's Watch remnants, and Northmen labored erecting obsidian pylons at shoreline where wall once touched sea. Bran waited in trance at heart tree stump, transplanted from Winterfell, roots fed by barreled sap. As wind howled, clouds shredded to reveal a sky swirling with eerie blue-green ribbons. Bran signaled. Arya plunged fused glass shard into trunk. The earth shuddered. Obsidian pylons hummed. From the north, a sheet of ice mist advanced, silhouettes within, tall and gaunt, eyes burning cold. Old songs named them others. The watchers steadied weapons, but Bran raised palm. No blade, he whispered. Only balance. He channeled power through tree and pylons. Sap glowed, flowed into runes etched around the beach. The mist paused, recoiled, then spun upward into a vortex that collapsed with thunderous crack. The silhouettes froze mid-stride, outlines dissolving like sugar in tea. A hush settled. Dawn bled promise along the horizon. The gap between life and death, sealed, for now. Exhaustion claimed Bran. Arya supported him as he whispered gratitude. The weave holds because you wander its edges, he said. She smiled. Someone must mend frayed cloth. She looked across gathering armies, wolves and krakens side by side, black brothers and free folk clasping arms. Neither crown nor council commanded this moment. Shared survival did. The years that followed found Westeros steadier than any living memory. Local assemblies matured, sending delegates on staggered turns, ensuring constant renewal. The Festival of Wonders became annual, a pilgrimage of invention and story. Qartheen warlocks faded from rumor after their halls collapsed in unexplained quake. Del founded a navigators guild mapping seas once feared. Tom captained a fleet protecting trade routes. Yandri became ambassador to Summer Isles, spreading lessons of council rule. Brienne retired to Tarth, training generations in honor before strength. Sansa, after 2 turns of co-leadership, stepped aside to govern the North's cultural blossoming, universities rising beneath weirwood boughs. Arya declined every office, yet her presence drifted like legend. She sailed, scouted, mediated border spats, and occasionally returned to stand at the column, laying new mementos. A pearl carved into twin wolves, a splinter of obsidian turned to glass by lightning, a feathered cloak folded like a promise. Children asked if she was queen of the seas. She would kneel, place a coin in each small palm, and remind them a realm of counsel meant they all shared its crown. One twilight, decades after her first voyage, Arya found herself again beside that broken rooftop in the Red Keep, now preserved as open courtyard garden. Vines bloomed where a throne melted. Stars brightened overhead, matching the silver in her hair. Footsteps approached. Sansa, lines at eyes softened by laughter, carrying a basket of lemon cakes. They sat upon the blackened stones. Shared quiet bites. After a while, Sansa asked, "Do you ever tire of wandering?" Arya gazed toward the sea. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But stillness feels heavier." Sansa laid head on her sister's shoulder. "The realm holds because you refuse to." Arya squeezed her hand. "No, it holds because we all choose again and again." Wind rustled garden leaves like pages turning. Somewhere, a bard sung of a wolf who carried no crown yet shaped in age. Arya listened, eyes on constellations. Balance endured because stories remembered why it mattered. As night deepened, she closed her eyes and breathed. Sap scent, sea salt, warm pastry, a trilogy of home. Tomorrow, she thought, she might sail north to glance once more at the silent wall shining under aurora. Or east, to islands uncharted where maybe, just maybe, other forges slept. Tomorrow would decide itself. Tonight, among ruins reborn as garden, Arya Stark was content. Her journey inked not yet done but beautifully unfinished. A line of ongoing song echoing across a realm that had at last learned to sing with her. Even as Arya watched the constellations wheel over the reborn garden, a faint trill of distant horns drifted on the breeze from the harbor district. She and Sansa lifted their heads almost in tandem, sisters tuned to the same pitch of worry despite decades of hard-won calm. In the moment before footfalls reached them, Arya tasted something metallic in the night air. A foreboding as sharp as needle's edge, so when the frantic steward finally burst through the vine-looped archway, she was already rising. "Ships," he managed between gulps of breath. Black sails strung with silver moons. They slipped past the lighthouse, silent, fast. Sansa stood too, crumbs of pastry falling from her lap. "Bravos," she guessed, though her tone made it clear she doubted the Titans folk would dare quiet approach. "No, my lady, no banners we know." The steward's face shone with sweat. "And they fly no lanterns. Dockmasters call it a ghost fleet." Arya crossed the courtyard in 3 strides, snatching her old riding cloak from a stone bench. "Rouse the watch," she told him. "And send word to Brienne on Tarth. If she still commands a sword, she'll want it sharpened by dawn." The steward fled. Sansa, hand already at the dagger she wore mostly for ceremony these days, arched a brow. "Will you at least sleep before you sail?" "I'll sleep when the realm is too dull to need me." Arya flashed a quick smile, softening the words. This is doubtless some merchant fool chancing night tide, but best not assume. Together they took the stairs down the spine of the keep, torches flickering awake behind them. Past midnight, even the capital's reviving neighborhoods hushed. Only the festivals, lingering lanterns, bobbed on alley gusts. At the harbor gate, Brienne arrived in full mail, white hair braided beneath helm, eyes bright as candle flame despite the hour. Gendry strode beside her, shoulders still an anvil's breadth even as age salted his beard. Brienne's greeting was crisp. "Bought 60 hulls, by count of the tower watchers. Catapult arms visible on at least 20. They run shallow draft. We'll not keep them from Blackwater proper, unless we scuttle barges at the mouth." "Nandanawand," Gendry huffed. "Sink our own ships? Takes days." "Not if we cheat the tide," Arya said. She pointed at Fogg's Passage, a narrow channel between 2 stone breakwaters, dredged deep during the last great harbor works. "We spike coal barges there and torch them at ebb. The smoke alone may stall their nerve. Brienne gave a low whistle. A gamble, but a Stark loves the narrow path. In minutes, runners spread through alleys toward coal yards. Brienne set about mustering the harbor garrison. Gendry vanished to the dock forges where night crews kept coke fires banked. Sansa, though less a warrior, deployed scribes to collect witness accounts, names of shipwrights who might recognize such hull work, merchants who tracked unusual orders of sailcloth or pitch. While the city rumbled awake, Arya stole to Wolfsong moored at the inner quay. Tom greeted her at gangplank, face storm-tight. "Rumor travels faster than ravens, Captain. We've hitched extra ballistae, but rigging needs more men than the Witch's voyage." She clapped his arm. "We'll field what hands we have. Del." Tom nodded aft where Del was already mapping tide and wind on slates under lamplight. Yandri, taller now by a head and possessed of quiet gravity, drilled youthful volunteers on crossbow crank. Within the hour, towers reported movement. The black-sailed fleet halted just beyond catapult range, anchored in a half-circle that glimmered with shielded lamps. Arya took a skiff to the outer mole. Spyglass steady. At first she saw nothing save sleek silhouettes dancing on deep swell. Then moonlight speared through thinning clouds and struck the largest galley's figurehead. Not kraken or stag or lion, but a stylized wolf skull circled by 8 stars. Arya's stomach tightened into a knot of raw ice. She whispered the creed of the nameless woman on the island. Wolf flanked by 7 dots, now an 8. But the figurehead bore a skull, not a living wolf. Balance inverted. Beside it, a long banner fluttered, a field of night blue sown with silver moons that pulsed faintly, as though powdered with glow dust. She had seen sails like that only once, in memory half buried from the Forge Cave's visions. A silver moon crest riding seas of blood. Brienne's voice boomed over surf. "Signal boats away, they mean parley." Indeed, a narrow-oared vessel, lantern-hooded, made for the mole. Arya strode down, cloak snapping. Guards leveled spears as it beached. 2 figures disembarked. A lean man in lacquered breastplate, shaped like overlapping scales, and a woman clad entirely in black gauze, her face masked in silk save for eyes shining unnaturally pale. The man bowed. "Lady Stark, blade of no crown, wolf of the western winds, titles multiply like summer flies." His Westerosi carried Essosi lilt. "I am Commander Vanes of the choir. We come to fulfill prophecy writ beneath the world's first anvil." Arya's hand hovered near needle. "Prophecies are parasites." The woman in gauze lifted a parcel swaddled in cloth the color of old bone. With a deft motion she unfolded it, revealing a shard of stone matching Arya's own. Fused glass veined red, but this one pulsed black within. "We forge from the same song," the woman whispered, voice like rustling ash. "But your chord is incomplete. Join ours and Wolf will howl in true harmony." "What harmony demands catapults?" Brienne growled from beside Arya. Commander Vanes gestured to his anchored fleet. "We come armed because those who deny fate answer only blades. Best if they see the blades up front." He inclined his head toward Arya. "We invite you aboard our flagship to witness the completed matrix. 8 for balance. Refuse and we shape the realm without your peace." Behind him the harbor lanterns winked across water. Arya thought of column coins, of weirwood sap-sealing rifts, of the sphere cracked in her dream. She felt the weight of possibility pressing like deep water. Accepting parley might unravel the fragile peace. Refusing might spark siege. She nodded once. "I'll come. Alone." Brienne bristled. Arya raised a hand. "Trust in dance, Sir Brienne." She stepped into the skiff. Commander Vanes took the rudder. The woman in gauze stared southward, unblinking. Boards creaked over dark tide. Gulls cried as if mourning. Arya measured the oar strokes, the tilt of lantern glow, memorizing rhythm should she need to leap. When they drew under the galley's hull, she saw runes carved along planking, smoothed circles, and jagged fangs interlocking. Language not of children or Valyrians, but something unknown. A rope ladder dropped. The masked woman glided up first, barefoot. Arya followed, senses blazing. On deck, a low chant hummed from hooded sailors, each swaying as if lulled by invisible music. The air smelled of cedar smoke and cold iron. They led her below to a chamber lit by braziers of pale flame that cast no heat. At its center, resting on an altar of mirrored glass, floated a disk of obsidian, thin as parchment, suspended in mid-air by unseen force. Carved upon it in ghostly etch were 8 symbols: wolf, kraken, lion, dragon, rose, sun spear, falcon, and the nameless moonsong emblem of the choir. Each pulsed faintly with inner light. Beside the disk stood a shape draped in robes of silk armor, tall, almond-skinned, hair falling like liquid silver. When the figure turned, Arya startled. The face was hers. Not exactly hers. Older by a handful of years, cheekbones sharper, eyes flecked with star silver, yet unmistakable. The doppelganger smiled gently. "Names are echoes," she said in Arya's own cadence. "I am heiress of the 8th step, the path you did not walk." She gestured to the disk. A realm bound by counsel alone drifts toward fractal war, each assembly fracturing into narrower shards until only noise remains. The choir offers a counterweight, a symphony. The hooded sailors' humming swelled, low, mesmerizing. Arya's breaths came short. She recalled Bran's warning. The wall between breaths thins. Vision and flesh blurred here. "What price your harmony?" she asked. Commander Vanes answered. "A seat for the choir in every assembly. A vote, no single voice, yet the disk ensures consensus. Its resonance silences dissensions turned violent." Eris touched the disk. Each sigil glinted brighter. Arya felt a tug behind her eyes, rhythm tempting as sleep. She drew needle. The hum faltered. Consensus forged by sorcery is tyranny draped in choir robes. She said quietly. "Freedom sings off-key." With a swift motion she slashed up. Light sprayed from the disk as steel met floating obsidian. The chamber reverberated like a struck bell. Hooded sailors howled in discord. Commander Vanes lunged, blade flashing. Arya parried, twisted, kicked him against bulkhead. Eris, the mirrored self, watched sorrowfully but did not move. Crack lines spidered across the disk, black light leaking. The masked woman shrieked, palms thrusting. White fire hurled toward Arya. She ducked, rolled beneath the altar, sliced through its mirrored pillar. The disk toppled, shattering on gnarled planking. Sailors collapsed, the hum dying. Eris closed her eyes and faded like mist, leaving only a soft afterimage. Deck alarm bells rang, boots thundered overhead. Arya sprinted the corridor, heart a drum. She burst above decks, vaulted rail, and plunged into night-cold water. Arrows hissed after, one grazed shoulder, searing. She dove deep, stroking for shadows of harbor piles. Surface at last near a discarded net. She gasped, men shouting distant. At the mole, Brienne hauled her out, armor slick with sea. Gendry bound her wound while Sansa's face mingled relief and fury. Arya panted, cut anchor lines, cripple fleet before dawn. Though catapults were scarce, coal barges set earlier drifted. Fire arrows turned them into walls of flame. Brienne led sorties of longboats hacking anchor cables. Wolfsong loosed ballista bolts into rudder joints. At sunrise, the Black Fleet found itself half adrift, half aflame. Many hulls run aground by erratic currents, conjured perhaps by the shattered disk. Surviving craft limped seaward, choir sailors wailing mindless. Those captured spoke of voices silenced in their skulls, of a chorus broken. Arya watched from parapet, wound throbbing. She felt no triumph, only bone-deep weary sorrow for glimpses of twisted self, who believed unity worth enslaving. Del joined her, maps clutched. "The rune for choir matches no root tongue," she said, "but its structure mirrors that forged glass you carry. Whatever power we roused, others touch shards and hear divergent songs." Arya fingered the shard at her belt. The rune now flickered dull, as though spent. "Maybe we wake seeds before soil's ready." she murmured. Or maybe, every awakening births both gardener and weed. Council convened thrice over the next moon. Debate raged whether to outlaw all sorcery or merely guard its instruments. Arya argued for vigilance, not shackles. Knowledge caged will rust until bars break. They compromised. Every artifact of ancient forging, sphere, shard, glass that surfaced must be studied in open forums, no secret chambers. Maesters grumbled. Sailors wary of demons nodded. Brienne sailed east to track fleeing choircraft. Sansa tightened network of harbor beacons. Gendry spearheaded Forge Guild, teaching smiths to test metal for latent hum, akin to detecting wildfire. Arya herself traveled north again, seeking Bran's counsel. Along the King Road she found wildflowers blooming unseasonably, a sign, some said. The realm breathed through tensions. Yet rumors persisted. A new sect petitioned for seat in assemblies, wearing pale masks like the woman's, preaching that silence equals peace. At Winterfell, Bran met her beneath Hearttree. Snow dusted crimson leaves, though autumn lingered. He listened, eyes clouded silver. Reflections confront us when we look too deep, he said. Your double was possibility, not fate. You chose. Others will choose differently. He touched the trunk. Sap oozed emerald now, soothing. The weave remains. Arya exhaled, weight easing. But cracks widen each time someone chisels. Bran smiled faintly. Then we keep chisels honest. On return south she stopped at White Harbor, where Manderley artisans carved new coins. Wolf on one side, blank on the other, to remind bearer choice remains unwritten. She commissioned thousands to scatter on travels. In streets she tossed handfuls to ragged children, each coin singing soft when struck. A subtle hum tuned to heartbeats, no sorcery but clever alloy of copper and iron that warmed in palm. One night, in a riverside hamlet, she met a weathered singer strumming sad chords. His lyric told of an unseen bell that tolled whenever freedom faltered. Arya tossed him a coin. The note brightened. He followed her path for days, documenting acts small and brave. A miller refusing cult taxes, a former choir sailor guiding fishing boats through shoals. He spread those stories farther than decrees could travel. Hope came in ripples, rather than proclamations. Years layered again. Children who watched the ghost fleet burn grew to hold assembly seats. They carried memory of black moons, but also of coins that sang. The choir's threat faded, merging into cautionary legend told at midsummer festivals. Yet pieces of broken disc washed ashore in far corners. Each shard whispered unique melodies. Some healed sickness. Fisherwives swore by it. Others sowed nightmares. Assemblies drafted regulation quick as storms, but enforcement lagged across mountain passes. Arya persisted, roaming, mending, negotiating. Her hair silvered fully. Lines radiated from eyes that had seen too many altars. In the 70th spring from her birth, Arya returned to the island of fused glass. She hiked alone. Dell's daughter captained Wolfsong now. Yandri's apprentices charted the smoking straits. The white-haired woman awaited at cliff, unchanged. Arya bowed slightly. We keep balance, she said. But weight shifts faster than my feet of late. The woman regarded her with sea-pearl eyes. Balance is not a still point, it is a dance eternal. One day, you will lay down rhythm for new feet. She gestured toward the forge crater. The anvil sleeps, but sparks from your strike birthed choirs and coins alike. No forge remains idle once heat knows path. Arya looked at calloused palms, remembering first water dance lesson, first blood on cobbles, first treaty signed in ink and hope. If sparks fly forever, who watches the fires? The woman smiled, bittersweet. Those yet unborn holding your stories like lanterns. She stepped back into mist, leaving behind a small object. An oblong stone translucent as dawn. Arya lifted it. Inside swirled motes of light, neither black nor red but shifting hues. No runes etched, no hum felt. Blank as unwritten page. She returned to Wolfsong, stone-pocketed. When asked what gift she retrieved, she answered, the next measure. They sailed north under aurora shivering purple and gold. At Nightfort she met Bran, older but still sentinel. She placed the blank stone in his palm. His eyes widened, milky film clearing a breath. "This is silence ready to sing," he whispered. A chance to begin without echo. Together they planted the stone beneath heart-tree roots. Sap glowed then dimmed. Wind hushed across snowy ramparts, as if the world inhaled new possibility. Seasons cycled. On her 82nd name day, Arya crossed the capital's square at dawn. Children peddled sun cakes, assemblies filing into marble chambers etched from melted throne stones. She heard laughter, market haggle, a distant hammer forging plowshare. She paused at the column. Tokens crowded its base. Wooden toy wolf, braid of silver moon silk, shard of broken disc blackened to harmless glass. Among them, Arya placed her last coin. Face blank, other engraved. Wolf's mask removed, plain human face instead. A passerby asked its meaning. Arya smiled gently. "It means the story is yours now." That evening she boarded a modest fishing cutter bound for the west, crewed by youths eager for open sea. She carried needle still, though its steel bore no stain in decades. At sunset, Sansa and grandchildren waved from quay. Arya touched fingers to lips, memory of everything flickering behind eyes. The cutter's sail billowed, harbor receded. No chronicler recorded her final landfall. Some swore they glimpsed her on summer sea coasts teaching spear stances to barefoot urchins. Others claimed she sailed rivers of Yiti disguised as storyteller, unspooling yarns of counsel and chorus. A bard in Bravos penned a lament of a grey wolf sailor, stepping across sunset's threshold, blades of light closing behind. What is certain, Westeros outlived crowns and false choirs, famine and tide, because whenever balance trembled, someone rose, often many someones, to steady it. They called their resolve the wolf's habit, after the woman who never stayed in place long enough for chaos to find purchase. Long after her trail cooled, assemblies opened sessions with a simple ritual. A silent moment, a shared breath, and a whispered question: what choice do we make today? In distant generations, children pressed ears. To coins their elders kept and swore, they heard a faint hum, like a sword's song carried on sea wind. Whether magic or memory, it pricked their curiosity and urged them outward, across roads, across differences, across boundaries of fear, to continue the dance a small Stark girl had begun when she'd nudged a charred sword hilt in a shattered throne room and dared to say the realm needed no crown. And so the story marched, never truly finished, always inviting a next step. Somewhere beyond charted horizons, waves folded and unfolded like endless pages, ready for footprints of new wanderers, eager to write fresh lines in a song that only grew richer, never louder, guided by the quiet rhythm of a wolf's steady heartbeat echoing on and on beneath stars.